Thursday morning, everybody. We're live on Facebook. It's official. We did it.
Good job, Corey.
Thanks.
I think you've got this down now.
I know. Just in time to forget everything over the summer.
Yes, right? Yeah. So, welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are here at our last Facebook Live of our online outreach series. So we're going to go ahead and get right to it. As you can see, we have friends with us today. And so we're going to go through and have them introduce themselves. But before we get to that, I just want to make sure that you remember who we are. My name is Gina Rogers. I'm one of the digital learning consultants at Grantwood AEA.
I'm Corey Rogers, no relation. I mean, I would love to be related, but no relation to Gina.
Also, would you really?
I really would. I think it'd be a huge Team Rogers. Like, we'd just take over the world. It'd be great.
Well, then I'm feeling left out because I'm Lynn Kleinmeyer, so I'm not part of Team Rogers, but I'm thankful to be part of the digital learning team and get to work with these two lovely ladies.
Great. And we're going to have our guests go ahead and introduce themselves, and they're going to do this alphabetically because they are all in different locations on each other's screens. And so saying to the right or to the left is definitely not going to work. And so, at least in my mind, it won't work, but we'll go ahead and have them introduce themselves. And we'll start with Andrew, who is our A.
Hey everyone, I'm Andrew, fencer maker. Not Team Rogers, hashtag. Unfortunately, not yet. Maybe I get an honorary edition of that. So no, I'm from Iowa City Schools. I serve as, actually get to wear two different hats. I'm an instructional technology coordinator as well as an instructional design strategist with a focus of technology and innovation.
Okay, I'm Carrie Burdick. I'm from English Valleys. I am a reading and English teacher, but I'm also our model teacher with a focus on technology.
I'm Jen Bangy, and I'm from Benton Community, and I am an instructional coach at the middle school, high school.
Hi, I'm Peggy Murphy, and I am with the Marion Independent School District. I wear a couple of hats right now too. I'm the technology and learning coordinator for the district and also interim technology director. Soon to narrow that down to just one beginning July 1st as technology director for the district.
I'm Rachel Schulze. I am the teacher librarian at Regina Elementary in Iowa City.
And I'm Robin Davis. I'm the teacher librarian at 3 elementary schools in Cedar Rapids.
Great. So you can see that we have folks from a wide range of roles with us today. Those who are connected still to classroom and practicing with kiddos, all the way up to those that are a little bit more system perspective. And so for our first question today, we, as you know, or as you might have seen in our start screen, we're really focusing on celebrations today, especially given that our year ended in such a unusual fashion, I guess I might say. And so I think that that probably, in a way, was a curse and a blessing, especially given the field that we're in with innovation, and people had to really begin to innovate and think a little bit more about how they would teach in this unusual circumstance. And so our first question is going to circulate all around celebrations. And this one is going to be for actually Andrew and Peggy, who have more of that district perspective. So going for, so from these past few months, what were some celebrations that came out of this unusual kind of end to the year? What were some things that you saw really went well, given the circumstances? And so maybe Andrew, I'll have you start.
Yeah, you bet. So I think one of the biggest things I've noticed, being able to support a lot of teachers and seeing the teachers' actions during this kind of challenging time, and also the uncertainty that exists with those families and students that they support. But I've been amazed at all that teachers have done to really go above and beyond to create those connections still with students and families. Specifically, I've noticed that some teachers have gone outside of what we would consider traditional contract hours. So there's been Zoom meetings to connect with students and families in the evening times. Also on the weekends, there's also been Zooms where they've invited Hawkeye athletes into the conversation. They've invited in guidance counselors and specials teachers to really highlight really the community aspect of supporting students and families to really create those relationships and bonds that still might be a little bit more challenging to foster while we're remote, but really they found some really innovative ways to support those students. So those have been some of kind of the initial ahas and awesome aspects of what teachers are doing. And then as a district level of how we're supporting teachers, I think one of the celebrations is that we've acquired Seesaw for Schools for our K-6 student body and staff. And so we're kind of excited to see how that can kind of bridge some of the barriers that we're encountering with students, and also just kind of see how that amplifies student voice and makes learning more transparent, as well as kind of fosters those connections with families as well.
Yes, I would say, our teachers really came together to create some really high quality materials for our students and our families. Our high school, a real big piece for us was that we went to required learning at our high school levels so that our students could continue to receive credits for fourth quarter. And that was a huge transition, and everybody handled it superbly. The learning curve for our teachers and was extremely high, and they really embraced it, and it was great to see everybody working together. Some other celebrations that I'm thankful for as we moved into this so quickly was the fact that we were one-to-one. We did have an LMS in place with Schoology. We had a help desk system in place that we really pushed our families and students to use for any technology that they were having issues with for breakage and needing break fix situations and that sort of thing, and also just to help students with their accounts and all of that craziness that occurred. So we had some good pieces in place. I would say another celebration is just providing that internet access to our high school students that didn't have it. That was another big piece, and we provided hotspots out to any of the students at the high school in the required learning setting that needed it. So the voluntary learning opportunities that our K-8 provided, just high quality, and also just doing that required learning at the high school were great celebrations for us moving forward.
Yeah, it's so, I mean, it's such a quick and abrupt shift. And so like to be able to move, like, especially a big system like you two, or bigger system and big system as you two are in so quickly and nimbly, is definitely a task. And I think that both of you guys have made such great changes, or I mean, have a lot to celebrate. Let's move down a little bit towards a building level and more of a classroom level with Jen and Carrie. You guys are both in, well, Jen's in more of an instructional coach role, and Carrie, a model teacher. And so what are some things that you've seen in classrooms that are worth celebrating?
I think just what you guys have reiterated, that maintaining that relationship piece has been really impressive, how teachers have reached out at the secondary level and at the elementary level. One thing that came out of this, I think that'll be really good for our system, is we had Seesaw K-6, and those teachers were really quickly able to push things out to their students. And at secondary, we had to really rethink that because a lot of us were using different LMSs or not, using a website. And so the school did purchase Schoology for us so that we'll all be on that now going forward. So I think that's really a positive for our system and for our kids. And I think teachers have just been really willing to learn and to reach out to kids and to make sure that our kids are okay and that they're fed and all those great things, and that they're still learning. And the teachers have office hours every day at the secondary level, so kids can just come in and chat or get help if they need it. And a lot of the groups are still having Zooms, and so people are just really staying connected, which I think is great.
We did voluntary learning through K-12. So some of our biggest successes were the fact that kids were doing it. Kids were getting on their Zooms, well, Google Hangouts. We used Google Hangouts. And kids were doing meetings one-on-one with teachers, and kids were being active. We had Canvas, and so they had all their old work on that they could do. Plus, we had a Google Doc that we put on the web so that they could access new documents. Plus, we had teachers emailing and contacting parents. But that's our biggest success, I think, is that we actually had kids working for the sake of, learning, and that's awesome.
Yeah, I think you highlighted, what has been a challenge, and one that you guys successfully overcame is the idea of student engagement and getting students to continue to engage and work in an academic fashion. But then also, Jen, you highlighted like how important those social emotional connections were, and just making sure that, that the kids' basic needs were taken care of first and staying connected with them. And so kudos to both of you guys. And then finally, our teacher librarian crew, Rachel and Robin, teacher librarians, backbones of the schools. Tell us what we have to celebrate from your perspectives.
Well, I think I'm going to be repeating a lot of what people have said, but just the connections that were made. We, as a specials teachers, I was oftentimes invited into their Google Meets, so I was able to see the kids, and that was really nice. And I learned a lot because I had to get them, the teachers and the parents, ideas on what to do and resources. And it really, these are things that I will be able to use in the coming, school year, either in face-to-face or if we're doing, mixed learning, whatever we decide to do, all the things that are out there for everybody, the virtual field trips, the, read aloud things, all of those different resources that we will be able to use no matter which way we are learning in the fall, if it's a combined mixed learning or whatever. So I think that was really something positive for me that came before. And so that will be a lot more helpful depending on what the future brings.
And how about you, Robin?
Yeah, a lot of the same stuff. I think for me, because I'm in 3 buildings, I don't always get to know my teachers and my staff as well. But for me, what I saw was a drawing together of the staff of and I'm sure it happens all the time, but I actually got to see how well they drew together and said, okay, I need this, we need that, who's willing to do this? And everybody was just willing to just jump in as best they could. And that's just an amazing thing to see, despite, all my family's home and all this stuff, and I've got all these other things going on, and the willingness to work together. And I guess one of the other things I would celebrate was, and it's not directly school related, but from a teacher librarian perspective, was the willingness of all the different publishers to open up some of this copyright stuff and say, yeah, you can read these books online, you can do these things. And they gave us some guidelines, and people were willing to work with, most people were using those. But I love the fact that all these national publishers said, yeah, go ahead. And all these authors and illustrators said, please use my work. And they even contributed some of that stuff. And from the perspective of teacher librarian who wants, to get books in the hands of kids, that was one of the biggest things for me, is to see that option open up there, and then help with my teachers find ways to share that.
Yeah, it was really encouraging to see just everybody really truly linking arms. Like you said, Robin, everybody from that national publisher level all the way down to linking arms, teacher to teacher, everybody being together and supporting. So it definitely is a celebration. I know, Corey, you've been kind of monitoring the chat. And so one thing we definitely want to encourage for those who are watching, definitely share your celebrations. And feel free to jump in and ask questions as we kind of continue and transition into kind of some of those next pieces. Before we transition into some of the things that you've learned, any other personal or professional celebrations that, you know, have surfaced that you're like, I got to share this celebration? Okay. I think you guys covered pretty much the gamut. And I think it is one of those things where we all kind of, there's so many things to celebrate that kind of covering all of them within a half an hour might be a bit daunting.
Yeah, but I think it was super interesting to listen to how you guys talked a little bit about like making those connections first with students and then bringing everyone into like a common online digital place, or a lot of you talked about bringing students to a common digital place. And so first make that initial connection, get everyone then into that common digital place, and then start thinking about the resources and the content and the learning objects and the things that we're going to have the students do. And I was amazed how that kind of mirrored to the continuous learning guide that our team had put together earlier at the beginning of this year. I don't know if that was a happy coincidence or if that was by design, but I think that that's something that we definitely want to remember is connections first, relationships first, then how do we, you know, get everyone in the same place to interact with one another, and then thinking about those learning objects next.
Yeah, definitely a celebration from our perspective.
Yes,
so
that's our personal.
Yeah, for us. There is one celebration in the chat that I want to just shout out. Kelly Robertson, one of our Grantwood colleagues. Hi, Kelly. She echoed a lot of what you guys said, but she also said, let's give credit where it's due to the students who are pivoting and growing and adapting in such a short amount of time. And I think that's a really important thing, is that, you know, kids are there with us and are certainly adapting and kind of rolling with the punches like all of us. And so let's give a shout out to the students as well. I think that's really a good call out, Kelly. So thank you.
Yes,
absolutely. Thank you, Kelly.
I'll share a celebration that I think is definitely worth mentioning. I really appreciate the resources that your team prepared and the Facebook Live items that you did and that they were recorded, because there were times where I didn't have time quite to share information out to the teachers that they were asking of me, because there were so many other things to do. So I could direct them to your guys' work, and their response was, that was perfect, exactly what I needed. Thanks for giving me that info. So thank you for that. And I'm sure that will continue in the future. And it was a great resource for me and for our teachers as well. So thanks.
Well, thank you. And I guess maybe this will be a good point to transition. So as we're thinking about ways that we can continue to support teachers and support systems and support learning organizations going forward, what is a lesson that you learned from this? What do you anticipate might be a challenge to rise to in the future, in the fall, and what sort of things might you need in order to solve that or to get to where you want? And so I think we'll just kind of popcorn out. We'll see how this goes. I always like awkwardly talk on top of people in Zoom. And so I'm going to try to exercise wait time.
I think our biggest challenge is going to be the fact we're a very rural district. If we have to go to required learning, we have a lot of students that either don't have internet or they just don't have the width to do things like this. And so that is without a doubt probably our biggest challenge. And when we could offer things like hotspots, but then we also have a lot of pride and they don't want to take those things, the parents necessarily. And that there's nothing wrong with that, except that that does present a challenge for us to give equal opportunity to all students. And then our other biggest challenge would be meeting the needs of IEP and 504 students through distance learning. Those would be what I would consider our two biggest challenges and what we're working on right now if the worst thing happens again.
Yeah, the equity of the learning that's provided to students is definitely a sticky wicket, you know, and so how do we design that learning, especially from that distance perspective, in a way that it's accessible to all of our learners and engaging for all of our learners too. So other lessons or challenges or ways that we can support you guys next fall.
I
I think
think, go
sorry,
ahead.
for sure. All right. We did exactly what Gina said. I always talk for people. That's all right. So I think there's two things that I kind of took away from this kind of remote learning school closure time period. And that, so two words that came to mind were grace and empathy. And so really like the design thinking process, I think is a powerful process as you're designing remote learning. We try to design it in a way that'll meet the needs of all learners, but oftentimes we don't actually get input from all those different stakeholders. We try our best, but sometimes we miss some of those key elements. And so I think having empathy towards some of those end users that we're ultimately trying to design learning for is a powerful thing to be mindful of as we go through remote learning, whether it's, as you pointed out, the access piece of how kids that are in remote areas, or maybe they have one device for multiple kids to share. How do we keep that in the back of our minds as we design learning? And then also just having grace for those students and families and teachers and district administration that's kind of leading the charge on this. Is just, we're all navigating this for the first time. So as we navigate some of these unknown circumstances that continue to change on a regular basis, like how do we continue to be mindful that it's the first for everyone, and that we're ultimately trying to do our best, and we're in it together, and that like we'll come out better as a result of it. But I think those two words are something that's just something that continues to resonate in the back of my mind as we're trying to design learning for students.
I should have gone first, Andrew. That was very, very well stated. I would say, obviously, the equity piece is constantly on my mind as we move forward, just as that's already been stated. The social emotional needs of our students, families, staff continues to be a critical piece. I think for our students, I'm kind of looking at how do we address the aspect of helping them understand what's required or what's needed to be a good digital citizen in the virtual world of online learning. What does it look like to be a good participant in a class meeting that's virtual? Because I think there's been a few things that have come up there that we maybe need to address with our student population. And I think all of this boils down to, we can, at Marion, our vision is own your future. So this is definitely where our students can really show how they're owning their future, because it's just such a different way of learning for them. I think another area that I keep thinking about as well is, how do we continue to prepare our teachers with the right professional learning moving forward? Whether they're in a face-to-face setting, a face-to-face and virtual setting, or whether they're in a virtual setting, it's like, now we need to think about how to prepare for everything that everybody needs in 3 different ways as we write our return to learn plan and what that looks like. So those are some big pieces for us to accomplish in the near future. I would say it continues.
Yeah, I think you illustrated something that I personally have been thinking a lot about, is how do we coach our learners to be good digital learners? I think they kind of got the idea of what it means to be a good learner in the school setting, in the brick and mortar setting. But as we transition to this more virtual setting, like how do we coach them to be good learners, good digital citizens, engaged in that learning task, and what do we need to put in place for them to be successful there? So other lessons learned, things that have resonated from this period of time that you're going to take with you moving forward next fall, or other needs or challenges?
I think just our teachers are already thinking about the what ifs of the fall and next year, and how could they can prepare for that over the summer and be prepared to, provide instruction in multiple ways and how to reach kids and to provide services and make sure that there's equity for kids. No matter if we're in the classroom together, I think all of that grace and empathy is going to carry over, even in the fall if we're back in the classroom. And how do we, meet the needs of those students no matter where we are and what that looks like.
I think too, finding teachers are always trying to be creative and make lessons interesting, but now we have to find even more ways to make learning interesting. Stuff that we would do in a classroom setting one-on-one to make something fun and interesting. How do we turn that to possibly make it digital? And if we have an extended period like this, what kinds of things can we do to continue that learning, to continue to make learning interesting? Because we all care about the students and we all want them, as you said, we want them engaged. And yeah, our district is moving one-to-one for the entire district. We've moved up our plan, and so there's going to be as you were saying, there's a sharp learning curve for those of us who are teachers, especially the elementary teachers, that we weren't expecting right away. Those of us in the elementary setting weren't expecting to do that, moved one-to-one for another year. And so there's a lot of pieces and parts that we're all going to have to do together. And when the fall arrives, and trying to figure out how to do that and in the best way, most efficient way possible.
Yeah. I think one thing about our profession that you guys all alluded to, and I think some of you even explicitly stated, is that when crisis, if you will, strikes, we all come together, and everyone supports everyone, and we try to do what we have to do to make it work for the kids. And so I think that's one thing that makes me really grateful for the profession that I'm in. Any other final thoughts on lessons learned or ideas that you're going to take with you into the fall?
Any advice you would have given yourself back in March?
I think there's probably so much we've learned, we can't even express it in words. And it's just changed who we are moving forward for the better. Yeah. And it's hard to really pinpoint everything that has changed in the short amount of time, but there's definitely been a lot of things. And it's just made us better educators, better leaders.
I think a big thing that I've been trying to keep in the back of my mind and in conversations with teachers and also district level administrators as we plan for the future is, and also if I could go back to before this started, is just the mindset of less is more. We want to take what we've done in face-to-face instruction and transfer that into an online format, but in the grand scheme of things, it's too much for families and students to navigate. So just being mindful of less is more would be what I would go back and tell myself to keep pushing on, keeping that at the forefront of our minds as we plan.
Yes, for sure. Less is more. Focus on that learning outcome, that learning objective, that one, I don't know, I think I called it the hill that you're going to die on. So if by the end of the year, the kids know one thing, it's going to be this, or they have had this experience by the end of the year. So we're coming to the end of our time together. So this is our, as I said, final Facebook Live for the year. We're beginning to wind down our school years, although it feels a little different maybe than our normal school years. So one thing that we did want to mention or share with everyone as a team, we always are trying to continuously improve. And so the continuous learning guide that we did bring out earlier in March, I think it was, or early April, we're trying to improve that. And so currently we've taken that and made some iterations to it, and we are putting it in an online format and structuring it as a self-paced kind of course, if you will, for teachers to go through and learn a little bit more about just continuous learning and what that might mean and look like for their classroom.
Kind of deepening the understanding of the things that we talked about in the continuous learning plan initially, just going a little bit deeper and actually shifting to an application piece. So people actually can walk away with not only the learning, but actually kind of putting it into action in preparation for the fall.
Yes. And so that will be released next Wednesday, I believe, fingers crossed. And then if you're interested in seeing that self-paced course or that self-paced online course, please make sure that you are signed up for our digital learning update. And I believe Corey is going to drop the link to sign up for the digital learning update into the comments in the Facebook Live. And of course, if you miss it and you're wanting to get signed up for the digital learning update, or you're wondering, how do I get this? Make sure to reach out to one of us and we'll make sure to hook you up. So Lynn, any final words?
No, just a final celebration of just gratitude for everybody who just joined us, especially those of you who are with us on this Zoom call, and just a thank you. Thank you for everything that you've done to support your students and your staff. And so that definitely, it's a celebration. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. I know that Teacher Appreciation Week has gone, but I think that we need to extend it to an entire month this year. So maybe the entire year. 2020 is the year of the teacher. I've declared it. So, all right. Well, thank you, everybody. And we can't wait to connect with you over the summer and, of course, connect with you next year during the school year. So, bye.